Valises for campground, arts, corrections, and fire management in the Santa Monica Mountains. The sculptural and instructional valises were created for use by the National Park Service and the Los Angeles County Fire Department to teach about fire prevention, national forests, and our relationship to nature. Each valise has a theme with specific talking points, and all of them circle back toward teaching issues about fire abatement and our connection to the wilderness. These are taken to community groups, events, and venues to be used as teaching tools. The female inmates at Camp 13, who have been trained as firefighters, supplied the content for the valises through their experiences with firefighting and fire abatement methods. The process was organic in the sense that there was a two-way conversation between Kim Abeles, as artist-in-residence, and the inmates regarding the development of the valises. Along with the talking points, the firefighters also responded to the artistic, content-driven outcomes. Participants worked alongside as well as with the artist on the elements of the valises. Some of the valises respond to discussions with park rangers regarding issues including fire prevention in residential areas, especially those adjacent to forests. Topics include securing homes from wildlife entering and getting trapped, and conversely, encouraging wildlife through habitats. The problems that arise with invasive plants and each citizen's responsible use of parks and national forests are also points of discussion with the valises. This project was funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, Los Angeles County Arts Commission, and led by the Armory Center for the Arts at Conservation Camp 13 with Kim Abeles as the first commissioned artist. This one was actually the first valise to be made. It's valise 1, Fire Line. And it's actually a photograph of a cedar with a welded structure around it and a handle that resembles smoke and fire. On the outside are the names of all the participants at Camp 13 that worked at some point or another on this particular valise. Once we open it inside, this is a particular topic that was important because the fire breaks that are 15 to 20 feet wide and the fire lines that are 4 feet wide are really created not only to help prevent fires, but in the case of a fire already burning, to keep the fire from jumping from the black sides to the green. So this is a particular issue that has to be done in terms of not only fire abatement, but while fighting fires while they're active. The project went on for 6 months, and one particular time I brought clay for the women to be able to make projects on their own or to have part of one of the valises, and one of the women came up to me and showed me 3 particular tools that she had made out of clay, tools that they use for fire abatement. So we decided we would make all the tools that are taken for not only firefighting, but toward fire abatement. So this valise is made so that it resembles a backpack, which is typical for the crew to take up all their supplies. And inside are models of all the tools for each member of the firefighting crew. This particular suitcase opens up. It unrolls to be about 12 feet long. I'm going to weave it a little bit back and forth so we can look at some of the parts of it. There are 12 members of the fire crew. There's a first and second sawyer and also a first and second bucker. The sawyer is actually the person with the chainsaw so that they can cut branches and help with the clearing. The bucker is actually a person who is helping to clear when all that wood is cut. And both of these positions wear chaps because of the danger with the saw. There's Camp 13 written on each of the helmets that were made. And of course they carry water as well as additional parts for the equipment. And the Pulaski is actually this tool right here where you can really break into areas and roots and rock that is hard to manage in terms of clearing. Next we have the McLeods. The McLeods are actually 4 people that carry that particular tool, and the positions are named after these tools. I guess that's starting to be apparent. Let me separate one of them out. All the McLeods carry the same thing. Okay. All right. And so this is actually a McLeod. It may look to you like a rake. This has been made with a screw on it so that the whole thing can close up, and now you see what that looks like. And it's also used, of course, for clearing. This is Cordura on the outside, but on the other side is actually velvet on here. So when participants are involved with touching these, definitely it's nice to direct them to this because it feels so mossy. The 2 last parts of the crew are very distinct. This is the drag spoon. And the drag spoon is actually a person that has a first aid kit with them and some extra tools that are needed in more emergency situations. Each of them also has what's called a rhino, which is another kind of clearing tool. And lastly is the swamper. Swamper also carries oil and gas. These are used for controlled clearing. And the swamper also has another important part. This is for communication, not only with the crew, but also with, say, county fire, so that they can have communication on what's going on. Because a person has to remember when they're going out to do this, they're hiking on very stiff terrain and also often deep into the wilderness, not just on the outskirts where people live and so on. This particular valise addresses the issue of invasive plants and weeds and grasses causing danger really in terms of fire. And so this particular one on the outside it's actually a photograph of a coulter bark, but you'll see it's got this gold artificiality in terms of the outside rings. And on this one, it unsnaps, and within is almost, it becomes like it's like a lunchbox in the sense, like what are we bringing onto the scene? The cards inside speak about different issues related to invasive plants and are used as talking points for people. A lot of these are from the Nature Conservancy. For example, you want to verify plants that you buy for your property and verify that they're really native and that you're not bringing in something else. Both with boating and boots that you track in, you want to make sure that you've cleaned them off so you're not actually bringing seeds into an area. You don't want to pack a pest when traveling, which relates to bringing in vegetables and plants, for instance. And there are other issues that you need to know. The deal with invasive versus native plants, the invasive plants tend to really take over, and after a fire, they're the first ones to begin growing, and then they really start taking over from all those native plants. So it's something that we can actually do something about, and we all need to pitch in about that. One of the women at Camp 13 helped me create all these pieces of recycled cardboard to make the bark for this particular valise. And this particular valise is about prevention. On the outside of this valise are listed all the major fires, the wildfires that have happened, beginning with them being recorded, which would have been in 1889. And these are color coded so that one begins to see that lightning is actually relatively small in the amount of fires caused by it. That would be a natural cause. In blue, they're unidentified, and in red, these are all the fires caused by humans. Of the ones caused by humans, 7% of those are arson, but the rest of those human-caused fires are actually just accidents that have happened, negligence, people really not understanding their role in safety, especially when people live near the wilderness. So inside this suitcase, there are a few things going on here. This tray pulls out, and on each one of these is a whittled piece of branch that tells you more about causes of fire. And there's all of them are with a match head at the end of them. Discarded cigarettes, for instance, playing with matches, campfires, power lines, electrical use, burning debris, and this one with lightning on there. And the stat is that 95% of the fires are caused by humans. Inside here is actually a landscape made out of crochet, and this particular crochet is made at least a few stitches, a few lines of it by every woman that worked in Camp 13 on this project. So everybody was teaching everybody else to crochet. A very positive community building kind of activity. So this piece really has a lot to do with both destruction and the creative spirit. This valise carries a very important message about fire abatement. Things you should do around your property in order to keep fires from happening to not only your area but also in adjacent locations. A lot of it's really obvious, but people need to be vigilant about this. Of course, you want to clean up loose branches around the property. You don't want to store a bunch of furniture in the area, cleaning up leaves, basically keeping the area clean so that if a fire, you don't want to start a fire, and if a fire is near where you live, you want to be able to protect your home. So in this valise, what it's really showing you are 3 different areas about clearance. At 10 feet, at 30 feet, at 100 feet, the idea is to keep it clear. You don't want a bunch of weeds in that further area even. And also in planting, you want to keep distances between things like shrubs so that a fire wouldn't jump from one to the next. Other things that are shown on here, you wouldn't use wood shingles anymore. It's in the 60s that they really said that they couldn't be used on properties because they are so flammable. Windows need to be closed at certain points. A grill needs to be put on top of a chimney. On the back of this, you can actually see that you have to clear off all this extra pine needles and leaves and so on that may settle on the roof. So on this particular valise, it's the correct side and it's the wrong side. So you can see on the wrong side, there's lots of stuff piled up on the balconies and porches. This valise addresses the issue of the beauty of our nature around us, and this one has to do with coulter pines. They're not considered endangered yet, but for instance, during the Thomas Fire, many of them did burn down. I had an opportunity to get permission from the U.S. Forest Service that I could go in and collect coulter pine cone from the Sierra Nevada area. And as if this is a gift, part of the idea with this valise is to really understand how amazing many of these trees are. And this coulter pine cone, which averages 3 to 5 pounds, I considered this to be like the Hope Diamond of the conifers. The nature valise really refers to another connection that we have. We aren't separate from nature, we are part of nature, and often we act like nature is something we only observe at zoos and through frames and somehow distinct from ourselves. This is actually cast plaster. It's a piece of bark that one of the women at Camp 13 had given me, and I made a mold of it and cast it. And within this piece, put hinges there and there. Within, it's a pretty literal representation of how much we are actually part of this nature that we need to take care of and to find as a connection with ourselves. The talking points for this valise came from discussions with rangers at the National Park Service in Los Angeles. And it really has to do with the intersection of the built environment with the natural wilderness environment. So for this one, they're really two sets of talking points because, you know, part of our understanding of living near forests, for instance, is that we want to keep certain creatures out and then we want to encourage other creatures. So it's interesting that it's really a combination of the two. So part of the deal with keeping raccoons, say, out of your attic is that in your house you really do need to put screens where there are open windows where they can crawl in, and similarly in the basement to keep out certain critters that you don't want there. You're going to have to really screen them out, and because you're protecting them as well as yourself, really. But we also want to encourage certain animals and insects, right? So, for example, with birds, sometimes people can build, this is a model of an owl box that people put within their trees so that it's an environment where owls can come. And the owls actually end up, you know, eating smaller animals that you're trying to keep from your area. So they will help with that. Similarly, bats with insects. People build, this is again a small model of a bat house where they come up in this area. They make a flip for it so you can clean it out. And these are also put in a tree or on a tall post. And also things like the California sunflower, you would have that because you really want to attract bees and help the bee community. So it's really a combination of prevention as well as encouragement. I mentioned at the start that the talking points for all these valises circle back on themselves. So all the issues related to fire prevention, fire abatement techniques and tools, also our relationship to nature, they are really talking points for all of them. This is based on the shape of a chainsaw, which is a primary tool that the women at Camp 13 use for both abatement and firefighting. And within this one, the issues related to fire abatement, you'll recognize it from the valise with the house. Similar things are important to it. The idea of really clearing around one's house, picking up all that extra cutting limbs that aren't going to do anything except become fire ladders, really clearing that area. This valise focuses on the idea of stewardship as an important part about our role for taking care of our environment. The pine cones that you see are actually cast plaster, and they were pine cones brought to me by the women at Camp 13. There's sky around this valise, and once it's opened, It holds actually another container because the type of care we need to take care of our environment is something that is very precious, and we're not going to be able to get it back if we're not caring for it now. These forests, have been growing for hundreds of years, so the idea of maintaining them and respecting them is urgent. The National Park Service also has an interesting program for kids called Junior Rangers, and we encourage people early to participate in their forests around them and also national parks.